So, hello again. And today in our discussion, we're going to be talking about whether we should, or you should, in fact, learn English. Okay. To be more specific, should it be compulsory to study English at high school in Japan? Because some students raise this as an important problem. So, do you agree with this statement first of all? Japan polls 78th in English proficiency out of 112 countries, according to EF Education First, which is a Swiss education company. In Asia, Japan falls below Taiwan, China, Vietnam, and South Korea. For years, Japan has lagged in standard TOEFL test below, well, far poorer countries such as Cambodia, Kazakhstan, and Azerbaijan. So, what do you think about that when we consider how much time and money and effort spent? Well, although it doesn't seem encouraging, if you look at 2016, English was ranked 138th out of 141 countries and was the lowest ranked in Asia. So there is improvement as well. If we look at recent history of English in Japan, well, throughout the 20th century, more and more English loanwords were introduced into the Japanese language, used for slogans, advertising, and concepts. So foreign loanwords took on an element of prestige, and that's possibly why it started to become popular. Now, English developed as undeniably a positive association in Japanese culture through this period. English for speaking proved attractive also to the general public, particularly since the image attached to, for example, like eikaiwa in the media was seen as cheerful, fun, and accessible to all. Yet, despite this growth, studies estimate that less than 30% of Japanese speak English at any level at all. Less than 8% and possibly as little as 2% speak English fluently, depending on which data you read. For comparisons, if we look at Germany, about 60% of their population speaks English, in which 16% of these speakers say that they are actually proficient. So let's have a look at the share of people learning English in Japan. Well, if you look at this, this bar chart, you will see that, in fact, 80% of those who study English are at regular junior high school and high school. Another 27% are at university, but you can see after that there is a drop, which may indicate that people are not so interested in learning English, or they are too busy to do so. But the thing is, it would appear that English is not so popular. Well, the objectives for English. Now, according to the government, the objectives for study English are the following: to understand the speaker's intention when listening to English, to enable students to talk about their own thoughts using English, to familiarize students with reading English, to understand the writer's intentions when reading English, to familiarize students with writing English, to enable students to write about their own thoughts using English. But if we look, although I think students agree that their reading and writing can be reasonable, it's the issue about establishing their own thoughts, especially when speaking. This is where a lot of students struggle. So what could this be? Could this be cultural concerns? Students feel uncomfortable speaking? Well, research does say that there are concerns from students over misunderstandings, which might occur due to different expectations of explicitness. They don't want to feel silly if they misunderstood this, the question or the topic, so they remain less talkative. Awareness of the importance to maintain harmonious relationships within the class. So students would tend to think not about their own ideas so much, but trying to have an agreed understanding. Maybe students concerned about losing face in front of others or making mistakes. That's another problem. And the opposite side, standing out from others who speaking out, may show them as showing off in front of their peers. So maybe that's another reason why students are less inclined to talk, or they fall short of other students' expectations, and even the teachers for that matter. So what are the reasons for poor fluency issues? Well, there are the cultural reasons, but there are other ones too, due to the level of education. So for example, if you look at the classroom, you'll find that there's a tendency to work on passive skills, such as reading and analyzing grammar and possibly listening, but not enough active roles, such as speaking and writing. There's a focusing on accuracy and avoiding grammatical mistakes. There's memorizing for preparation for tests, which are quickly learned and quickly forgotten. And the teachers may not have adequate enough English communication skills. So these are factors in the education system as well. And in fact, native English teachers may also be an issue because they do not understand the student needs either. And then obviously the final part is the university entrance examination. Is that suitable to acquire a second language? There's a lot of debate about that as well. So let's look at disadvantages. Well, disadvantage one of learning English, it takes up your time. Yeah. Opportunity cost. In other words, the cost of doing something you want to do, for example, the opportunity cost of enjoying an amazing concert is paying for the price of a ticket. You agree to pay for the price of the ticket to go and see the concert. But what about learning English? Cost isn't always measured in money. When it comes to learning a new language, one of the main costs is actually the time used. The time you could have spent doing something else, for example, like catching up with friends, working overtime at your job to save money, or learning something else, like how to play the guitar, or at high school, learning another subject which you're more interested in. So wasting time, focus on your strengths, what you enjoy or benefits your future. Disadvantage two, losing your cultural identity. Now, this is probably more for learning English at elementary school, I would suggest. In some cases, especially for younger people, learning a second language comes at the cost of ignoring your first, which can be considered a negative part of learning a second language. For example, if you move to a new place and you have to communicate in a different language most of the time, except maybe at home, you might end up neglecting your first language, not concentrating on which language is most important for you. Since language is strongly connected to your cultural identity, this might not result in feeling as though you don't have as much of a connection with your own culture anymore. Disadvantage three. Well, according to statistics, the polls say that Japan is worsening in English proficiency. It's questionable though. Meanwhile, technology is undermining the entire rationale for difficult, expensive language learning. Yes, now that it's free, a lot of online automatic translators like Google Translate and DeepL instantly render Japanese into understandable English, although I would say not completely accurately so. And so with AI and machine translations, which struggled in the past over the subtleties of syntax, culture, and grammar, have been vastly improved by deep learning, for example. This means that using these algorithms, they are able to mimic the way the brain processes information, which means that it's more, there's improvement in translating your ideas. In fact, the EU is among many organizations calling this a revolution in language. And so we must accept this as well. Disadvantage four. The language business markets found that 827.2 billion yen was increased by 1%, was spent on various goods and services in learning English in 2015. I admit it's quite some time ago. The foreign language classes for adults, foreign language classes for children, infants, preschool, deployment of teachers to kindergarten, daycare centers for children, texts, the list goes on. So you can see that when you consider all these factors, a lot of money is spent on this education. So the question is it value for money? Well, however, we do need to think about why you're learning English. There are reasons too. So the benefit one, well, for years, multinational companies have been asking for English to be a common corporate language. In other words, a common language for everyone to use. In East Asia, many parents, professionals, and students themselves see English as a prerequisite for attaining the best jobs on the market, according to Min Tran, the Executive Director of Academic Affairs of Education First. that Swiss language education company that offers classes in Japan, apparently. Well, that's true. Benefit 2, if Japan is content with not being connected to the rest of the world, then it doesn't need English, according to Liang Morita, a professor of language and culture at Nagoya University. However, and there is a however, big businesses such as Toyota and Shiseido have found that the Japanese market alone is not able to sustain the growth in profits they desire. In other words, they need to go and consider foreign markets too. So it follows that Japan needs to use English in business with the rest of the world. Therefore, there is a benefit. Benefit 3. The practical economic benefits of English for Japan might seem clear. Japan's population fell by a record in 2019, so it dropped. But as you probably know, foreign residents now make up more than 2% of the population, nearly double the proportion 20 years ago. So it makes sense. In the last few years, Japan is creating new visa programs to attract more foreign workers, highly skilled and service sector employees alike, although the new workforce, especially caregivers, many come from its Asian neighbors. But with this increase in foreign labor, it will make sense that English is more commonly used. Benefit 4. If you know how to speak English, people think you're smart, said Maki Shirase, a Japanese undergraduate student in the City University of New York. So that's a pretty big benefit. The discourse around English as a challenging skill that doesn't come naturally to many people may be an additional barrier for everyday learners. However, after graduating college, when I visited my hometown, some of my friends started to treat me differently, Shida said. Not making fun of me, but the fact that I had studied abroad and spoke English made me different and probably special as a result. And then benefit number 5. When you're looking for a job, you need to have more on your CV than just academic achievements. So making the most of opportunities to pursue extra activities to improve your English abilities actually makes sense. Furthermore, let's have a look at this. There are other considerations to think about. Negative attitudes towards this may have been developed due to the level of education. For example, Japanese tutors at the English Tutor Network with Fluent English say they spent a ridiculous 4,000 to 5,000 hours studying to reach that level. So it's a very slow and inefficient way. Compared to the common European framework of reference for languages used for foreign language studying within Europe, which is based on achieving total fluency in a foreign language, it takes just 1,200 hours of classes. So basically a quarter of the time. So we must ask, why does it take so much longer in Japan? I studied English in junior high school, and university. When I graduated college, I didn't speak English at all, said Norihiko Inoue, the regional sales and marketing director of English Education First Japan. So teachers in Japan have pointed to English classes' strict correspondence to university entrance examinations as a major reason for their students' poor proficiency. They argue that the focus on exams leads to an overemphasis on grammar as well as boring memorization-oriented classes. Perhaps you feel the same. The Japanese Ministry of Education has introduced initiatives to make classrooms more interactive, but the teachers don't know yet how to execute on these initiatives. He said, Japan students are actually very good at grammar and vocabulary, which I would agree as well, but they can't communicate very well because they're afraid of making mistakes, as we explained earlier on. Whether it's cultural or due to the education system, that's another point. Numerous studies agree that Japanese culture's aversion to risk-taking leads may have made many students become reluctant to push their limits, especially in speaking when it's essential for language learning. So how do we get students to push their speaking abilities is a question I ask myself as well. I mean, students, when I come to my first year class at the beginning, these are the comments they sometimes say. English is difficult. We have difficult homework. Listening is too difficult. I don't like tests. This textbook is easy for us because we focus on communication, not just reading. And there's silence. So how do you deal with these problems? It does occur. But obviously, you've got to change attitude and everything about it as well, to a matter of fact. But anyway, to do so, I think it's important to think about self-efficacy. Now, self-efficacy is the personal determination of one's own ability to deal with a certain task. If you believe you can do it, you will do it because you're in control. Whereas those people who feel as if they haven't got the ability to do it will be less involved in trying to make their achievements. Yeah, but it's personal determination. You can do it. That's the key part. So when we think about reflection on self-efficacy, this belief that you can do it, unless people believe they can produce desired effects by their actions, they have little incentive to act. Efficacy belief, therefore, is a major basis of action. People guide their lives by their beliefs of personal efficacy. And the students with poor efficacy in English are most likely those who do not believe that they can learn a foreign language. I wonder where they get that attitude from. Participants' self-efficacy perceptions have been reconstructed and improved through a process of positive experiences. So if we change the experiences at, for example, high school and junior high school, students will become more positive about their own self-beliefs. That's important to remember. So benefits of studying English, well, let's have a look. The pros of studying English: improves and widening employment prospects, explores the world with confidence. You can access world-class education systems and establishments. That is a key point. Recently, there's quite a lot of Japanese universities that are dropping in world rankings, and that is because of research. So getting access to other research, you need to be able to use English. Studying English also increases cognitive ability, and you can start a life in an English-speaking country or just traveling around. It improves your communication skills, and it opens up a world of entertainment and popular culture, which I would totally agree with. And it will improve your confidence if taught correctly. Now, drawbacks. Okay, there are drawbacks. Learning English demands a considerable amount of time and dedication. It can be difficult to notice your proficiency without taking tests, so therefore it adds another negative aspect, or not what can you do, or can't you do. Pronunciation of some English words can be rather difficult, and teachers may tend to focus on that too much. Becoming fluent in language is even more difficult, and people don't become proficient in English even while working abroad. So even if you have the opportunity to be in an English-speaking country, it doesn't necessarily mean you'll improve. If you don't use English often, it'll be hard to remember words. And that's probably what happens after students graduate university. They don't have the time. People with poor vocabulary will find learning English to be more difficult. That's a question I'm not sure about, that, but there's some truth as well. And then students may prefer spending their time doing something they actually enjoy. So there's the cons. So make two sides. Okay, let's do the pros of compulsory English being a compulsory school subject. So the benefits, and the cons will be the people who feel as if we should stop studying English at high school and it should not be compulsory. Okay, good luck.